Welcome to the Grow Your Business and Grow Your Wealth podcast with Gary Heldt. Gary is an expert in helping business owners put together a plan that will provide a better future for their businesses, themselves, and their families. On the podcast, Gary interviews other professionals who share his vision, and together they share secrets and strategies any business owner can use to build a better financial foundation for your business and your life.
Hey, welcome back to podcast. This week, my guest is Richard Phillips, and he's the founder and senior partner with Crossroads Capital. Welcome, Richard.
Nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Sure. Tell me, what's your story behind starting up Crossroads?
Well, I had my own shop before this, decided to add more capital to it, add a bigger team, put more resources to play, just finding smarter ways to get deals done in a more streamlined way that allows for flexibility, but discipline that's required. We like to think we cut a lot of things out of deals that are your traditional investment banking approach, get it done smarter, faster, and with less brain damage to all the parties involved.
What's your philosophy behind working with businesses and getting deals done and things like that that differentiates you from other firms?
Well, we spend a lot of time because we take the approach of a consultancy more than an investment bank. Most companies aren't ready for sale when they come to a banker. The success fee is at the end of a transaction, so you want to start yesterday. Being a smaller shop with limited resources, we have to focus on doing our homework because time kills a deal. When you're in the market, it's like a house on the market too long. You don't want to be dilly-dallying with diligence. You want to be prepared to have your diligence teed up, ready to share in a format that's understandable. Spending time in that prep, positioning, thinking about the buyer pool and how to present to that buyer pool what they're interested in, understanding where the holes in the business are to the extent you could fill those up or at least have mitigating circumstances or explanations why certain customer concentrations exist. Other kind of diligence concerns, look around corners to figure out, all right, this is going to be concern for buyers. How do we address it? And what might be a mitigating circumstance or what buyers may care about more than others? Are we prepared to have an explanation? Really, every transaction is about solving for asymmetric information. And how do you sort of make folks comfortable and de-risk a transaction? And that's more data, sooner, better, and in a more understandable, succinct format.
What, I guess, I come to you and say, hey, I want to sell my business tomorrow. Obviously, that's late in the game with coming to somebody like you. Can you talk about that process and when you would like to get with the owner of a business when they're thinking about selling?
Yeah, I mean, the earlier the better. And I would say your first conversation when you're considering selling, maybe it shouldn't even be with an investment bank or M&A professional, but with an attorney, with a wealth manager, with some maybe your other people in your cap table that are, key decision makers there, of course. Have those things in place and talk to a banker when you're like, what do you think my value is? Not every deal lends itself to an investment banking traditional sell side auction. Knowing what you have and where you have it is important, but also knowing what your value is and what the buyer pool looks like will help you figure out the best path forward. And that may not be a traditional sell side auction, especially in the lower middle market, we have found.
So now, what are the average size clients that you get involved with?
On the enterprise value, 10 to 30, and it probably would tighten that up more from like 15 to 25 if I tighten up that normal curve a little bit more. Certainly, there's nothing stopping us from doing deals bigger than that, but it's just the nature of the lower middle market. They'll go to larger organizations typically, feel better served by a more bulge brackety kind of institution that has those other service offerings that might be more important to those clients. And so that is, but yeah, in that range is what we tend to focus on. And the buy side, where it's a little wider of a range, just because we're often doing acqui-hires or bolt-ons and things of that nature.
So now, when that client comes to you and you're trying to help them sell, what are some of the things that you're really looking at from that client in helping themselves? What are some of the things that are going to torpedo a deal or something like that the client may have?
how much of it, I'd like to say a business is most saleable, the more turnkey it is. And so that business owner, let me use the example of a GovCon. If you're billable, you're not saleable as a decision maker, as a CEO or as a principal in the organization. You need to take yourself out of the day-to-day operations, institutionalize yourself. A lot of business owners wear many hats just because of necessity.
Right.
But as you prepare and position your company for sale, you want to institutionalize that to the extent possible, so that a company that's saleable is a a company's saleable the more you can go to Tahiti for 2 weeks and operationally it's still running the same. We've been building a lot with our friends at a firm in Kansas City, business process automation, documenting these flow charts of ops, get them automated, get them in place so that, like I said, the owner gets hit by a bus, everything's still working the same way. And that's built all that stuff in the owner's head, whether it be his or her role in BD, is that, taking them out of the day-to-day ops, I think is a big part of that. And that is what we've found is a kind of a letting go of that is tough for a lot of business owners. Because they're so ingrained in it. But you're thinking that's to change a bit when you're ready for sale, because if that value is in you and you're walking away from the business, when you sell, that value walks away with you.
Yeah, I try to tell a lot of people that that's a difference between owning a business and owning a job. If you have to be there, you have to be the one doing everything. You own a job. You don't truly own a business because, like you said, you can't just walk away and the business keeps operating. You have to be there. And for a lot of small business owners, it is us that people are paying the money for, not necessarily everybody that I have working for me. That is definitely something. What do you see happening in the market right now? I'm starting to see more venture capital money out there buying up more of the smaller businesses. What are you seeing from your side?
What I've been seeing is a kind of blurring of the lines between what is we used to have, I don't know, maybe I'm dating myself a bit. You had your strategic buyers and you had financial buyers, and they were two different buckets and might as well have been two different kind of, you talk to them in a different way. They
Right.
approach the market a different way. That so much of that is blurred over the last number of years. I think it's a function of so much of just portfolio companies that are being used as the platform vehicle to acquire upon. And so they're really acting like strategics, but with that deal rhythm that a PE has, a financial buyer has, that they're in the business of doing, bolting on transactions, doing deals. Whereas, corporate development at even a big organization, they do deals when the opportunity presents itself. And, there's this, they're executing on a strategy that shifts over time, but they don't have the same kind of deal rhythm. There's been a bit of a morphing and a blurring. Being in the Washington area, GovCon was a big area where we focus, and you see it in the Enlightenments, Arlington. I mean, a lot of folks don't even know some of the portfolio companies are doing, because it's not, the Arlington or Enlightenment, they're kind of in the bit of the background of the deal. Telebridge is doing the deal, or any of their other platform companies at Enlightenment. And so there's a blurring between the financial buyer and the strategic. And yeah, even the VC, you see them, even the PE world, you see a lot of where they used to just everybody was focused on doing buyout, traditional leverage buyout transactions, but you see more and more. I think it's a function of dry powder and the scarcity of quality assets out there, flexibility and approach. So you see a minority stake, PE is willing to take minority stake, and some of them are modeled that way, like Washington Harbor, for instance. You see that Blue Delta is kind of in between that, more of a growth capital / minority investment. They may be a little earlier, less mature of a stage in the government contracting world, but you see a blurring of style, a blurring of what is a VC and what is a PE. You definitely see that in a lot of the SaaS market, whereas those are, like the Alpines and the Valsofts, they're doing 60, 70 deals a year. They might not be more than 3 to 5 million in revenue, but their original style was more of VC. They're doing more buyout kind of work. So there's been a blurring of all that. I think it's a matter of the hot market we've had has cleared out the force a little bit. And so the financial buyers and strategics have to be more flexible on their style, what kind of fits into their map of what's available and what they can go after, and their approach to it. And so they're, which is forcing them to be a little bit more flexible. But the idea is to find the right asset, the right property, and go after it. Transaction makes sense, and that business owner will be receptive for it.
Are you seeing, I mean, with interest rates, have gone up, are you seeing that? Is that really affecting the sales of business as much?
Not as much as you would think. The conventional wisdom, as a math problem, you would think it would have a significant impact. It has less. Deals are taking longer to do across the board at all sizes, at all levels, because people are sharpening the pencil all the more and being careful about what they're buying. Once again, talking about that force being cleared out. Valuations haven't come down that much because what is left that's available, that's quality, still getting, it's a supply demand thing. And so if valuations are down, they're only down slightly. And you see it more, Gary, you see it more in volumes than in valuations, that correction. It has impacted some things, but with so much dry powder, there's some countervailing influences there that are kind of dampening what would be all things being equal, that would have a major impact. But these other dynamics, whether it be market conditions and supply demand of quality assets, are still keeping prices higher than one might expect from the interest rate impact alone.
Yeah, I would think that prices would be lower just because, like you're saying, people are sharpening their pencil, looking at things where before you could borrow a ton of money at 2%. People may say, okay, we'll let that slide. We're not so worried about it because it's not, in the long run, it's not going to affect us very much. But now, with rates going up, I would think that it would affect you more if you're buying.
It's also affected structure. I think you see it in deals where there's less cash. I could tell you an LOI we put together not long ago. The valuation didn't change that much, but what did is the cash component was half of what I would have done. Right. 3 years ago. I think you see it corrected for in structure as well. In less of a cash component, because cash has become more expensive. So more earnout, more equity rollover, more other kind of deferred contingent kind of forms of consideration.
Gotcha. If somebody was looking to find somebody like you guys, what are some of the things that they should really look at before they select someone to help them with this?
I think how ready they are, what their understanding of their valuation is, who that market, that pool of buyers looks like, and how attractive they are to that buyer pool. We'll tell you what kind of process you need to run, whether it's a negotiated transaction with some folks in your general network that have knocked on the door before and it just makes sense and there's a relationship there, or does it make sense a broader auction? And I think that self-assessment is important. And then also, what do you need to get out of the transaction and where your valuation is? Those are often not the same thing. That will also give you a sense like, okay, the business is worth, let's just say $10 million, but I need 12 million to, that's what my retirement needs or goals are.
Right.
How do I get there? Maybe, selling now maybe is not the right approach. Maybe, an acquisition or some other kind of growth in the business will create some kind of transformative change that does bring you up above that plateau level and sort of, creates the next level of growth that you can get, or key hires, things of that nature. I think what you're looking for is important, and where the company is, and make a determination from there before you speak to anyone. Or maybe they have someone you speak to help you with that kind of analysis as well. And certainly we do that kind of assessment is like, okay, this is what you would get today if you're going to market. This is your current state. This is what your future state can be if this and that happens and you make these corrections. Is it worth what's that ROI, and what's your timeline look like?
Right. I think lots of times, especially with the smaller businesses, the owners think that it's worth a hell of a lot more than it is.
Yeah. I've never met a business owner who thought his company was worth less than what we came up with. I don't think that's happened once in my life.
Right. Yeah. All right, Richard, we covered a bunch here in a short period of time. What have I not asked you wish I had?
Well, that's a good question. I think things to keep in mind, that difference. Are you a lifestyle business or what I would call more institutional business? It's one thing to just know yourself. I think a lot of business owners will fool themselves about how much of a lifestyle business they actually are when they know what that buyer pool looks like, and be able to tell your story. A compelling narrative is so important. The more pure play you are, I think the easier to tell that story in a process is, but also know your value proposition to the market and have that, being able to communicate that and have that sort of flow through the business in conversations with customers, with new employees, with current staff, with the marketplace generally. I think is a real overlooked part of it. And getting that narrative right and being able to articulate a vision and the value proposition. Why is your business? Why not somebody else? And being able to, because it's kind of a fundamental question, and that kind of one of the first one people ask in a process.
Right. So, Richard, people like what they hear, and they want to reach out and talk to you, find out more about Crossroads and so forth. How can they reach out to you?
Well, I guess I could provide do you want me to provide my email right now? Or?
Yep.
Phillips, 2 L's in Phillips at Crossroads Capital DC. Find us on the web, on LinkedIn, certainly very active on LinkedIn. Either one of those ways, reach out to us. We're happy to get a discussion going, see if we could point you in the right direction. I mean, often the answer is not us, or there's a solution where we can point you to. We might be carrying a hammer around, but not every situation is a nail. There may be non-M&A solutions that are really going to solve your problem that we can point you in. When we diagnose a lot of problems, we may not be able to solve them ourselves. Okay. So, I think that would be what I would leave you with, that thought.
Okay, great. We really appreciate your time today and the discussion on this. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Great. This week, our guest was Richard Phillips, who is the founder and senior partner with Crossroads Capital. I'll see you guys next week.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.